I never thought humiliation could come wrapped in candlelight, soft jazz, and 100 white roses. But there it was, table 10, nearest to the restrooms, farthest from the dance floor. That's where they seated me, Danielle Keller, 34 years old, older sister of the bride, and the quiet embarrassment of the family. I wore the only formal dress I owned. Navy blue, second-hand, slightly too tight in the waist. I had spent the morning steaming it in the bathroom while Eli sat on the closed toilet lid, swinging his legs and humming to himself. He was 8, and he was radiant that day in a suit I had altered myself, with sleeves that still bunched around his wrists. His tie was crooked, his shoes a little too big, but he didn't notice. He leaned closer to me as the newlyweds danced their first dance across the ballroom floor. "She looks like a fairy queen," he whispered, eyes wide. I followed his gaze toward Natalie, my sister, the bride, 5 years younger and 100 shades more adored. Her hair curled in cascading waves, her skin glowing beneath golden lights. She spun in Ethan's arms like she had been born for the moment. Every camera followed her. Every smile leaned her way. I hadn't seen her in nearly a year. When I got the invitation, it was addressed to Danielle Keller. No call, no apology, no mention of Eli. I had to text and ask if my son was welcome. The response was a single thumbs-up emoji. I should have taken the hint, but I didn't. Not because I was hopeful. Hope is too generous a word. I went because Eli was excited. He'd never been to a wedding. He thought we were going to be part of something magical. He thought for once we'd be included. The salad course was served. Arugula with strawberries and goat cheese, arranged so delicately on chilled white plates it felt like they weren't meant to be eaten. Eli picked at his with polite confusion. I showed him how to use the butter knife to cut the bread without tearing it. He beamed like it was a magic trick. I looked around the room. Laughter floated easily. Champagne poured like water. I spotted Marianne, my mother, holding court at the head table, her hand on Natalie's shoulder, her face sculpted into pride. She hadn't looked at me once, not even when I waved politely during cocktail hour, not even when Eli whispered, "Hi, Grandma," as we passed her on our way to the buffet. She had simply turned away, fixing her smile on someone more appropriate. I kept my expression neutral, my hands folded neatly in my lap. I'd learned over the years how to sit without taking up space, how to smile without expecting it to be returned. Then came the speeches. The best man stood first. A few harmless jokes, a mention of Ethan's college days, and a slightly tipsy toast. People laughed, clapped. Someone rang a wine glass with a fork and yelled, "Kiss the bride!" Then Natalie stood. The lights softened. A hush settled. Even the servers stopped moving for a moment. She held her champagne flute with perfect poise, her voice sweet and crisp like a school valedictorian. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said, "to celebrate not just a wedding, but the people who helped us get here. My friends, my new family, and, of course, my sister." I looked up. Eli turned to me, eyes wide with joy. "She's talking about you." My heart squeezed. I smiled. Carefully. Natalie continued. "Danielle's been such a role model to me. She's taught me strength, independence. She's shown me how to carry on even when no one wants to carry you." The room laughed. Not loudly, not all at once, but enough to sting. I blinked. "Single motherhood isn't easy," Natalie said, her smile unchanged. "But she's really made it work. No partner, no help, no problem. Just her and, well, whatever babysitter she could afford that week." More laughter now. Sharper. Braver. My stomach flipped. "Strong," Natalie said, raising her glass. "And clearly very available." That one landed. The laughter rolled across the room like a slow wave. Glasses clinked. Heads turned. I felt the heat rise in my neck. Eli's little hand tugged at my sleeve. "Why are they laughing at you?" Before I could answer, I heard my mother's voice, just loud enough to carry. "She's a used product, darling," Marianne said to someone beside her, "but she still polishes up well." The laughter that followed wasn't warm. It wasn't playful. It was cutting. It was cruel. It was planned. I stared straight ahead, afraid to blink. My napkin twisted in my lap. My shoulders burned with the effort of staying still. Eli leaned into me, confused and quiet. The music played on, distant and inappropriate. I didn't cry. Not yet, because I refused to cry in front of my son. But something inside me had already started to break. And then I heard it, a chair sliding back. Not mine. From the head table. I turned and saw Ethan standing. He didn't look at Natalie. He didn't look at Marianne. He looked at me, and he didn't blink. He just stood there at the head table, hands resting on the back of his chair, eyes fixed on me. The room hadn't gone silent, but it had changed. The energy thinned, warped by discomfort. A few people chuckled nervously. One guest cleared her throat too loudly. Someone dropped a fork. Natalie reached for his sleeve. "Ethan," she said through her teeth, her smile still plastered on. "Sit down." He didn't. Instead, he moved, slow, deliberate. He stepped around his chair, walked to the front of the table, and held out his hand. Not to Natalie, not to the crowd. He reached for the microphone. No one offered it, so he took it. "Excuse me," Ethan said. The laughter stopped. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," he continued, voice low but steady, "and definitely not like this. But I guess I need to." Natalie's expression cracked for the first time. The warmth drained from her cheeks. She looked up at him like a child afraid the rules just changed. "I've heard a lot about family this past year," Ethan said. "About loyalty, image, honor." I listened. I watched. I thought I understood what that meant. He paused. His eyes swept the room. No one met his gaze. "But what I just heard," he continued, "that wasn't family. That wasn't love. That was mockery, dressed up in satin and served with a smile." Marianne sat straighter, lips tight. Her wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. Ethan looked down at me again, just for a second, and I saw something sharp in his face. Not rage, not pity, something deeper. Disgust, maybe, or disappointment that such cruelty had been allowed to bloom. "You all laughed," he said, "and maybe you thought it was harmless. Maybe you thought it was tradition, humor, banter." He shook his head. "But you made a boy watch the world laugh at his mother." All eyes turned to Eli. He flinched under the pressure. And that broke me. I reached for his hand and stood. Not because I wanted to say anything, God, no. I didn't have words for that room. I stood because I needed to breathe, to walk out before the walls closed in. But Ethan's voice cut through again. "Danielle, don't go." I froze. It wasn't a command. It was a request, a plea. Whispers spread across the reception like wind through tall grass. A woman in a blue dress gasped audibly. The DJ reached for his console, confused. Natalie just stared, motionless. "I can't pretend I'm okay with what just happened," Ethan said again. "I won't stand up here and let that kind of cruelty pass as comedy." He stepped down from the platform, crossed the space between us with the same calm he had walked into the ceremony with. Like he wasn't just walking through a wedding, but through fire. He turned to face the crowd, his back now shielding Eli and me like a wall. "I've spent months hearing about appearances, about keeping things classy, about avoiding drama. But if being classy means staying silent while a woman is humiliated in front of her child, then I don't want it." A murmur rose. He ignored it. Danielle didn't ask for attention. She didn't come here to be the center of anything. She sat in the back, smiled, clapped. She let this night belong to Natalie, and you turned that into a joke. He turned back to Natalie, then, slowly. "I don't care how many floral arrangements you designed. I don't care how perfect the photos looked. What you did was cruel, And what hurts most, it didn't even shock anyone. Silence, utter and complete. Natalie's lips moved, but no words came out. Marianne stood. That's enough, she snapped. But no one moved to agree. No one echoed her. Ethan looked at her. You raised 2 daughters, he said, but only one of them knew how to be gracious. He turned back to the crowd. I'm not going to pretend this is okay. Not today. Not ever. And with that, he handed the microphone to a stunned waiter and walked straight out of the hall. No music played. No one clapped. Natalie was left standing at the altar of her own party, while the room collapsed into whispers. And I stood there, frozen, still holding my son's hand, breathing in something I hadn't felt in years. Not justice, not pride, but something close. Recognition. It had been 3 days since the wedding, and I still hadn't slept through the night. Not from grief, not from rage, just stillness. The kind that settles into your bones after something inside you snaps, and you stop trying to make people understand you. It felt like silence, but not the empty kind. The kind that fills the air when a storm has passed, and all that's left is the mess, and the sky above it, finally clear. That morning, I was standing in the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee I hadn't touched, staring at the same window I always stared through while washing dishes. Eli was humming in the next room, lining up his toy dinosaurs. My phone buzzed. A message from Jenna, a girl I used to work with at the cafe before my second job took over. Danielle, the wedding video, Ethan's speech. It's online. You need to read the comments. I frowned. I hadn't even known anyone was recording. But when I clicked the link, my breath caught. There it was. The head table, Natalie frozen mid-toast. The crowd, awkward and laughing. And Ethan, standing, his voice calm and unwavering as he defended me in front of everyone. There I was too, caught in the frame, sitting still, holding Eli's hand, my expression half shocked, half resigned. The title read, Groom shuts down bride's cruel joke, walks out mid-wedding. It had over 67,000 views. I didn't want to read the comments, but I did, and I couldn't stop. They came from strangers, hundreds of them. Most were women. I was Danielle once. I sat at the back and let my sister call me a failure in front of our relatives. I would have given anything to have someone speak up like that for me. That boy is going to grow up proud of his mom. You can tell already. Some said they cried watching it. Others said it made them realize they were still waiting for someone to stand up for them. One woman simply wrote. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. And somehow she still won. I didn't cry, not right away. I just sat at the kitchen table, coffee cold, staring at the screen. Not because it hurt, but because for the first time in my life, someone saw me. Not as Natalie's sister, not as Marianne's disappointment, not as the woman who got pregnant and ruined her potential. Just me, a woman who showed up, endured, and still managed to be kind. And people cared. That afternoon, a bouquet arrived at my apartment door. It wasn't roses, not lilies or orchids, or anything showy. Just wildflowers, lavender, daisies, soft green sprigs, tied together with twine. No note, except a small card that read, to the lioness. No signature. I didn't need one. Later that evening, as I folded laundry on the couch, Eli came over dragging his stuffed dragon by the wing. He sat beside me and asked, Mom, is Uncle Ethan still getting married? I paused. I don't know, sweetheart. He nodded solemnly, then said, I think he picked the right person anyway. He leaned his head against my arm and added, You. I couldn't answer. I just kissed his hair and held him a little tighter. The next morning, my phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen like a warning label. I let it ring. Then I let it ring again. Finally, I answered. Her voice was cold, sharp. I hope you're satisfied, she began. You embarrassed your sister. That boy of hers made a scene. Ethan humiliated us. And now what? A video. Do you enjoy airing our family's dirty laundry? You think strangers applauding you online makes you a hero? We are family, Danielle. And family doesn't do this. I listened. For the first time in my life, I didn't interrupt. I didn't explain. I didn't try to fix it. When she finally stopped to breathe, I said calmly, "I'm not your scapegoat anymore." Then I hung up. No yelling. No begging. No drama. Just a full stop. Clean. Clear. Final. I looked around my tiny kitchen. The paint peeling in the corners, the sink full of dishes, Eli's backpack on the floor, open and messy. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had, because for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to earn peace. I just claimed it. It was a quiet evening. The kind of quiet you don't notice until you're in it. No machines humming, no notifications buzzing, just the distant sound of a neighbor's lawnmower, fading with the sun. Eli was in the living room, building a cardboard fortress out of cereal boxes and duct tape. I was folding laundry on the couch, watching him through the doorway, marveling, like I often did, that a person like me had created something so endlessly good. It had been a week since the wedding. The video had climbed past 120,000 views. I stopped checking after day 3. The comments were still coming, but I wasn't chasing them anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't desperate for someone to understand me. I already had everything I needed, right there in the next room, with ketchup on his shirt and socks that didn't match. "Mom." Eli called out, peeking from behind a cereal box wall. His face was streaked with orange marker. "Are you still sad about what Aunt Natalie said?" I paused, a shirt still warm in my hands. It wasn't a question I expected. Not a week later. Not while folding underwear and separating mismatched socks. But he asked it the way children ask about rain. Genuinely curious, no judgment, just watching the sky change. "Not anymore," I said honestly. "Why not?" I looked at him and smiled, because I think I finally stopped waiting for them to see me. He blinked like he was processing something far bigger than he had words for. Then he shrugged, picked up a cardboard tube, and declared, "This is a canon now." I laughed, not the tired, strained laugh I used to fake at family gatherings. A real one, light, uncomplicated. Something in me cracked open, softly, quietly, not from pain, from release. That night, as we brushed our teeth side by side, Eli looked at me in the mirror, his chin covered in toothpaste foam. "I think you won," he said. I paused. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Aunt Natalie had the big dress and the big cake, but you got the part where someone was nice to you." My breath caught. It was the kind of line that didn't come from cartoons or school. It came from watching, listening, feeling the difference between people who perform love and people who practice it. After he fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and reopened the envelope I'd been avoiding all week. It was from the school. Inside was a flyer, Parent Career Day, a form to fill out, a checkbox to volunteer. I used to dread things like that. I never thought what I did was impressive enough to be worth talking about. I wasn't a doctor, or a lawyer, or whatever Natalie was this month. But I had something better. I had proof that small eyes watching me every day didn't need me to be impressive. Just present, honest, steady. I filled out the form. Under occupation, I wrote, "Front desk clerk, former barista, full-time mother." And beneath that, "expert in holding things together." The next morning, I passed by a florist shop downtown on my way to the bus stop. In the window was a small sign, "Support local mothers. Ask about our lioness bouquet." I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. Somewhere, someone had taken that phrase and made it real. To the lioness, that phrase had stayed with me, not as a compliment, but as a kind of truth, because I wasn't loud. I didn't claw my way through the world. I didn't destroy people to win. I endured. I protected. I stayed. And when it mattered most, I didn't flinch. Natalie still hadn't called. Neither had Marianne. And strangely, I didn't miss it. The silence from them wasn't empty anymore. It was space. Space to think. Space to breathe. Space to finally hear myself without all their noise. That night, before bed, I tucked Eli in and kissed his forehead. He looked up at me and whispered, "You're my favorite person, even if you're not famous." I smiled. "That makes me the luckiest person alive." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't go to bed dreading the next family holiday, or the next cutting remark, or the next round of pretending to be okay. I went to bed knowing that the war they'd waged on my worth had finally ended, not because they surrendered, but because I stopped showing up to the battlefield. I still remember the sound of my boots that winter, rubber soles slapping against cracked pavement, soaked from sleet, too thin to keep out the cold. I was 7 months pregnant, alone, and walking 2 miles to my third prenatal appointment because my car had died 3 weeks before, and no one answered my calls anymore. Not Natalie, not Marianne, not even our cousin Ava, who used to braid my hair before school, and swore we'd be each other's bridesmaids one day. It was the year I disappeared, not physically, but emotionally, socially, publicly. The moment I told my family I was keeping the baby, their warmth vanished like fog under a noon sun. I didn't fit their image of success anymore. I wasn't the college standout or the future executive. I was just a cautionary tale. "Are you really keeping it?" Natalie had asked, her voice flat over the phone. "Do you even have a plan?" "I'm going to figure it out," I said. There was a pause. Then she hung up. Marianne didn't say a word at first. She just sat across from me at the kitchen table, stirring her tea like it offended her. Then, finally, she said, "Well, you've made your bed, Danielle. Let's hope you can lie in it without dragging the whole family down with you." That was the last real conversation we had for almost 5 years. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner. The windows leaked in the winter. The radiator hissed all night like a dying thing. I kept my coat on when I slept. I worked late shifts at a bakery on the edge of town, hands swollen and ankles sore. Customers asked if I was okay to be working that far along. I lied and said yes. I couldn't afford not to. The night Eli was born, it was snowing. I took a cab to the hospital alone. The nurse asked who my emergency contact was. I gave her my own phone number. Labor was long, 21 hours. No one came. The woman in the bed beside me had her mother holding her hand, brushing her hair back, whispering prayers. I had a sweating cup of ice and a nurse who clocked out before the shift change. But when Eli finally arrived, everything stilled. They laid him on my chest, this tiny, warm, breathing miracle, and for a moment I forgot how small my world had become. I forgot the silence, the absence, the cold apartment, and the unopened baby gifts from strangers at the bakery who'd heard my story and left bags on the counter. I forgot everything. He blinked up at me like he already knew the world wasn't kind, but he was willing to give it a chance anyway. I named him Elijah. It means my God is Yahweh, but that wasn't why. I named him that because it sounded strong, like a name no one would dare laugh at, like a name that could carry both of us forward. I stayed in the hospital for 2 nights. No visitors, not one card, not one call. When we were discharged, I wrapped Eli in a thrifted blanket and caught the city bus home, praying the heater in our unit was still working. That night, I sat on the floor with him in my lap, rocking gently because the second-hand crib hadn't arrived yet. Snow fell outside in heavy, wet flakes. The room smelled like takeout and baby shampoo. I remember looking down at his face, his impossibly tiny fists curled against his cheeks, and whispering, "I don't care who walks out again as long as you stay." He yawned. His eyes fluttered closed. And I knew, right then, that I would never beg anyone to love me again. Not my mother. Not my sister. Not the man who left the moment things got inconvenient. I would not chase people who made it clear I wasn't worth the weight of their presence, because from that night on it was just Eli and me, and somehow that felt enough. More than enough. Mondays were always the hardest. Not because anything dramatic happened. That was the thing, nothing ever did. It was just the rhythm of it. The early morning alarm, the quick splash of cold water, the 5-second decision between brushing my hair or packing Eli's lunch properly, the long wait at the bus stop, holding a lukewarm travel mug and praying the shift manager wouldn't notice I hadn't washed my uniform the night before. Just the sameness, the quiet, relentless sameness of survival. I worked mornings at a cafe near the university, a place full of tired grad students and professors who only ever learned my name when they wanted to complain about almond milk foam. The espresso machine hissed like it hated all of us, and the floors were always a little sticky. But it paid for groceries. It gave me enough hours to scrape together gas money and keep the lights on. My second job started at 4 p.m. sharp. Front desk at a small boutique hotel on the edge of town. The kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened, except maybe once a month when a couple came in fighting and stormed out separately by midnight. I had a 30-minute window between jobs. Just enough time to microwave a frozen burrito in the back room, call Eli's after-school program to make sure he got picked up on time, and scroll through my phone pretending the world wasn't moving past me. That day, I had exactly $11.32 in my checking account. Rent was due in 4 days. Still, when Eli asked that morning if we could stop by the bookstore next weekend so he could just look, I said yes. I always said yes to books, even if it meant we'd eat pasta with ketchup for dinner 3 nights in a row. After my shift ended that night, I walked the 2 blocks home in sneakers that used to be white. My feet hurt, my back ached, but the second I stepped through the door and saw Eli in his dinosaur pajamas with peanut butter on his chin, I forgot all of it. He looked up from the floor, where he was building a cardboard castle. "You're home," he beamed. I nodded, dropping my bag by the door. "Barely." He ran over and hugged my legs. That was the thing about Eli. He didn't ask for more. He didn't care that we didn't have matching furniture or that our TV only got 3 channels. He cared that I showed up, that I kept promises, that I remembered he liked 2 marshmallows in his cocoa, not 1. Later that evening, we sat on the couch eating scrambled eggs for dinner. Eli had drawn a new comic strip in his school notebook about a superhero mom who stopped time so she could do everything at once. "She's got super speed too," he said proudly, pointing at the stick figure mom. "And look, her cape is made of coffee cups." I laughed. "Sounds familiar." He smiled, then got quiet. "I know you work really hard, Mom." I looked at him. "I don't mind. Not for you." He leaned his head on my shoulder. "You're stronger than a superhero." No one had ever said that to me. Not once. Not even when I gave birth alone. Not even when I held 2 jobs and kept the lights on and made sure the homework got done and the clothes got washed and the heart kept beating. But hearing it from him, it made everything I'd sacrificed feel less like a loss and more like a quiet kind of victory. That night, after he went to sleep, I opened my laptop to check my bank account. Still $11.32. But I didn't panic. Not this time. I stared at the screen and whispered to myself, "You've made it this far. You'll make it further." Because I had already survived the worst parts. The rejection. The judgment. The nights when no one called and no one came. I had survived the silence. And somehow I had raised a boy who saw strength not in wealth or status or sparkle, but in steadiness, in warmth, in a mother who came home every single night, even when the world made her invisible by day. I didn't know her name at first. She was just the sister. I had seen her walk into the reception with a little boy in a too big suit and a shy smile. She looked out of place, not because she wasn't dressed appropriately. Her dress was simple, clean, even elegant in its way. But there was a tension in her posture, the way she scanned the room like she was searching for someone who might acknowledge her, someone who might say, "I'm glad you're here." No one did. I was a college friend of the groom. I had met Natalie a few times, always in curated moments, brunches with crystal glassware, photo shoots for their engagement, wine nights where she spoke more about aesthetics than affection. She was beautiful, yes. Charismatic, absolutely. But warmth? I'm not sure I ever saw it. The speeches started, and at first, everything felt like any other wedding. Light jokes, teary thank yous, nostalgia served alongside rose. But then Natalie raised her glass. I'll never forget the way her voice changed when she turned to her sister. It was subtle, sugar-coated, the kind of tone people use when they want to insult you without being technically cruel. She's strong, Natalie said. Independent, a single mom, clearly unwanted by anyone else. The room laughed. I didn't. I looked at the woman at table 10, Danielle, I would learn later, and she didn't laugh either. Her hand was resting gently over her son's. Her face didn't twist. It didn't fall. It simply froze, like a mask locking into place. And then their mother chimed in. She's a used product, but she still polishes up well. Another wave of laughter. Louder this time. Bolder. Permission had been granted. I saw the little boy turn to his mom. He asked her something. I couldn't hear it, but I saw her nod, her lips barely moving. I think she was trying not to cry. And then the groom stood. I had no idea what he was about to say. For a second, I thought maybe he was going to defend Natalie, try to smooth it over, repackage it as just a joke. He didn't. What he did instead, I still don't have the right words for it. He gave the microphone a voice it wasn't meant to carry. He spoke slowly, deliberately, like every word was chosen to undo what had just been done. He said that what happened wasn't love. He said that mocking a woman in front of her child wasn't tradition. It was cruelty in formal wear. He said that if this was the kind of family he was marrying into, he needed to reconsider the kind of man he wanted to be. And then he left. He walked out. No yelling. No dramatics. Just a quiet, shattering statement. I won't stay silent. Everyone in the room was frozen. Some people stared at their drinks. Others glanced around, as if searching for a way to undo what had already been said. But my eyes were locked on Danielle. She didn't speak. She didn't rise. She just held her son's hand and let her silence say everything. Later that night, I wrote a post about it. I didn't use names. I didn't share the video. I just wrote what I saw. One woman publicly humiliated, one man brave enough to say enough, and one child watching it all unfold with the quiet weight of someone growing up too fast. The post went viral. People began commenting, I was her once. Others wrote, I wish someone had stood up for me like that. Some asked where to send flowers. Others just said, thank you for saying what we needed to hear. And eventually, someone uploaded the video. And that's how I finally learned her name, Danielle. And now I'll never forget it, because sometimes the people who sit at the back of the room are the ones who deserve to be at the head of the table all along. It's strange what stays with you. The cruelty fades in time. The faces of those who laughed become blurry. Even their words, the sharpest ones, begin to lose their sting after a while. But what stays is the moment you realize you don't owe anyone your silence anymore. I used to believe that love, especially family love, was something you had to earn. That if I just worked harder, apologized more, stayed quiet longer, I would be accepted. That maybe one day I'd sit at the table and no one would look at me like a stain on their linens. But what that wedding gave me, ironically, unintentionally, was the final piece of clarity I needed. They were never going to change. Not because they were incapable of love, but because they loved conditions more than people, image more than connection, appearances more than truth. And I no longer wanted to be small enough to fit inside that kind of love. I didn't dance at my sister's wedding. I didn't raise a glass. I didn't toss a bouquet or cry happy tears under fairy lights. But I did walk out holding my son's hand, my dignity, and something more powerful than applause. Certainty. The kind of certainty that settles deep into your bones when you realize you don't need to be approved to be valid. That you don't need an invitation to be whole. That survival is its own kind of crown. For weeks after, People kept messaging me. Some wanted to know if Ethan and Natalie were still together. They're not. He sent me a short message 2 days later. No pressure. No apology. Just a sentence. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. Some wanted to send me money. Others wanted to send flowers. A few women even reached out asking how to leave families that looked like mine. But the message I think about most came from a woman named Sharon, 64 years old. She wrote, "I've waited my whole life for someone to stand up for me the way Ethan stood up for you. It didn't happen, but watching it happen for you healed something in me. Thank you for being the mirror." I cried when I read that, because I realized something else. Sometimes the fight isn't about proving your worth to the ones who refuse to see it. Sometimes it's about being a lighthouse to someone still lost at sea. Someone watching. Someone waiting. Someone like Eli. He saw it all. He saw me sit in silence. He saw me stay standing when they wanted me to crumble. He saw that love isn't always loud, but it is always visible if you're brave enough to live it out loud. Last week, he brought home a school project. Heroes in Real Life, it was called. Most kids wrote about firemen, astronauts, football players. Eli wrote, "My mom works 2 jobs. She fixes broken things. She doesn't yell. She just keeps showing up. That's what heroes do." I read it in the kitchen, standing over a sink full of dishes and a floor covered in mismatched socks. And I wept. Not because I was sad, but because it took me so long to realize I had already won. Not by being the favorite, not by being forgiven, but by refusing to disappear, by reclaiming my voice in the quietest, most permanent way. I am not a joke. I am not a mistake. I am not a product to be polished and paraded or dismissed when inconvenient. I am a woman who stayed, a mother who endured, a sister who left and never looked back. So if you've ever been the one seated at the back, told to be quiet, told your story didn't matter, hear this. You don't need their stage to have a voice. You don't need their blessing to be worthy. And you never, ever needed their shame to define you. Walk out if you have to. Speak up when it's time. And when they ask, "Who do you think you are?" tell them the truth. I am the lioness. And then don't wait for the applause. Just walk forward. That's where freedom begins.